Well, hey there, it's Christian from 7 Gaming Network, and I'm back after a little break, after having a little baby, or my wife having the baby, with some more content for you. Now, I have been able to get some games in, quite a lot of games actually, with a baby strapped to my chest, hence I haven't been streaming, but I've been testing quite a few decks. Now, I've been trying to come up with something that's sort of twofold. One that uses my favourite character, I think, that was printed in the previous set, and also something that's going to take on the meta and is going to be consistently good against it. Maybe even meta beating. In my testing, this deck has been really quite successful. And the characters that we are looking at, my favourite one being Thrawn, who I have wanted to try and make him work since, well, ever since they killed off Thrawn, which was a rubbish deck to play against. I'm kind of glad they did for the health of the game, but there hasn't really been anybody to go with Thrawn ever since. And Mother Talzin, I really think, is possibly that character to actually make Thrawn competitive again. Now, what I'm going to do in this video is, it's a straightforward deck tech. I'm going to go through this deck that I built. You know, we got the whole thing here, a whole bunch of cards. I'll go through all of them. But first of all, just a very broad brushstrokes idea of how the deck works, and then we'll go into the individual cards. Thrawn can generate a lot of resources, a huge amount of resources, and when we chuck in some upgrades like Chance Cube, we really ramp up that resource making capability to big levels. That allows us then to play with some nice big chunky supports. Now, one of the things that this deck manages very, very well is with the focus that we've got on the character dice, as well as some cards that we can play, some events that we can play, we can get those consistently big sides off those supports off in the vast majority of rounds. And as the game builds, and the survivability of this deck is pretty good, as the game builds, the sheer number of powerful supports that we can have hitting the table means that we can kind of overwhelm, if you like, our opponent's ability to defend against it. Add to that, we've also got shield removing capabilities with this deck. We've also got lots of great mitigation that we can play, and of course we've got Thrawn's ability. All of this makes a very strong deck, I think, in this current meta. So let's have a look at these particular characters then. So we'll start with Thrawn. He is a lot of points at 17. I'm not going to deny that, but he has. We're playing him for these amazing dice that he's got. He's got the 2 resource side, which I'm not going to spend ages going on about Thrawn, because you can watch EAW era videos to see a lot of people saying why he's good. But for our purposes, it's that 2 resource side to build lots of resources. And it's those 2 focus sides. It is really very strong having access to that much focus, and I'll show you why. When you also pair him then with Mother Talzin, who's also got this essentially focus type ability, and we can be very positive of this going off, because there's actually only 2 cards, the one I've mentioned, Chance Cube, in the deck that doesn't have an odd number as a cost. So, I mean, I can't really even think of a time when I've tried to use Mother Talzin and I've actually turned up a Chance Cube. So we can pretty much rely upon that effect going off, and she's also got focus on her dice as well. So we've got stacks of ability to see the sides of the dice that we're playing that we want to see because of all this focusing ability. Now, Thrawn's also quite a chunky body at 12 health. That's good, because Mother Talzin really isn't at 9 health. However, we have got lots of good mitigation in the deck, which I'll talk about as well. The really good thing about Mother Talzin, of course, as well, is that she also has 2 really good damage sides on, straight up and down, 2 black damage sides, 1 and a 2 ranged. We're going with support, we're going to be using ranged damage, so that fits in quite nicely too. So as a pair, these characters, yes, we're 1 point under. There currently isn't a 1 point plot that we would want to run. This deck could actually get better in future sets if there is one. So next, what I'm going to do is have a look at how we can generate our resources with this deck. We're going to generate them off Thrawn himself, of course. We could use Talzin's dice, but the big things that we're going to use to get our resources in when we're playing with this deck is Chance Cube. Now, there is the caveat of saying that you do have to pay one to be able to use this. So for me, those sides really, they say 0, 1 and 2 and then 3 blanks. I know that's the sort of effective thing with Chance Cube. But in this deck, of course, with so much focus around, we're going to be resolving that Chance Cube on a 3-side almost every single time. That's definitely my experience with this deck. It's very consistent at getting that side. I wouldn't normally like to run Chance Cube unless I'm running a deck with a lot of focus. This deck is that. Now Crystal Ball, of course, not only does it add in extra focus to be able to make sure we're hitting the sides we want and the damage on our big supports, but also it's giving us more resources, and it's giving us this extra cheeky little ability which almost gives us another way to have more mitigation in the deck. We know that we can turn one of our dice to whatever side we like when we activate Mother Talzin. If we're using that Crystal Ball, of course, we can use it in an offensive fashion to see if we can reliably use it on our opponent's dice by looking at their deck. So Talzin is building in a little bit of extra control for us when we add in the Crystal Ball, but really the resources are coming from this going off, getting Chance Cubes. Can we make lots of resources without Chance Cube? Of course we can. We've still got Thrawn. It's just nice to be able to use one of his dice for some resources and one of his dice for the focus. But if we need to use both of his dice for the resources and use Mother Talzin to get one there, that's fine. We can cope with that. So we're building lots and lots of resources from the characters. What are we going to spend them on? Well, the main thing that our win condition is by lots of damage through our supports. So let's have a look at those that we've chosen. Now, of course, we're playing with odd-numbered supports, odd-costed supports, and these are the ones that I feel they've been really good. This has been a really good suite of supports to use here. Largely because there's big damage sides on all of these, and of course then there's massive damage sides on our Sonic Cannon, which is an expensive card to run, but of course this deck can have the resources quite easily to absorb those really big expenditures, such that I don't often, in fact I don't think I've ever used it, using its ability to tap one of my characters to be able to pay for it. So let's just talk through why I've chosen these ones. Look at the damage sides on them. Each of them has, in terms of apart from the Sonic Cannon, our ATDP, our First Order TIE Fighter, our Fang Fighter, they've all got 3 sides on. Now, 2 of those you do have to pay for. Again, we're running a deck that can happily pay for these things. And then First Order TIE Fighter and ATDP have got 3 damage sides on. I really like that. And you can easily add that remove all shields from all of an opponent's characters on the First Order TIE Fighter, that special, as like another bit damage side. So, especially when there are so many decks now running shields, First Order TIE Fighter has, for me, has gone through the roof in terms of utility and usefulness, and I'd say it's actually been probably consistently the better win condition. It's so much easier to get out than the Sonic Cannon. It's a bonkers thing when you get the cannon out with this deck, because it's going to be able to dish out big beats with all the focus around. You're going to get it to the side you want. But that First Order TIE Fighter, 4 damage sides, and only having to pay for one of them, it's been really great. Now the Fang Fighter is another very useful card. The one little sort of combo that's worked quite nicely is the fact that you can play in Fang Fighter, and then with the ambush you've actually just activated your pin down, which is probably our best piece of removal. You know, we're not going to play many rounds. We're certainly not going to play past the first round unless we've been very unlucky with our mulligan without any vehicles out. So pin down is almost always going to be on for us, and it's actually quite a nice cheeky little play if they're thinking, right, well, they don't really be able to pin down me at least, and then we can play out Fang Fighter and still play it off the back of that. And of course it's got a straight up 2 and a 3 side on it, and that's really nice. The other sides we're not so fussed about. The only thing that's really a benefit is that the Fang Fighter does have a resource side on it, and having a resource side on our vehicle that's a support is actually really quite cool because none of the others do. The special on ATDP is a lifesaver in this deck. 2 of the cards that can cause you a problem if you don't get rid of them with Thrawn, because you've perhaps identified other things that might be more threatening, is C3PO if you're playing against a sort of a discardy a hero mill deck, and running interference. Those are real pain in the necks of cards, and there are also sort of fringe cards like maybe a salvage stand that could be annoying with this deck when we're trying to build up resources. So having the ATDP out is really good because it's a great way to get rid of those annoying supports that can cause you real issues. The other thing that the ATDP is really good for is in the hero vehicles matchup, where of course they're playing lots of the HWK that costs 2, they're playing the Snow Speeder T47 speeder thing that costs 2. Being able to just stick it straight to the special with all the focus that we've got and just discard those cards off the table, really great. That has been really handy in that matchup. And of course there are still decks out there that are running lots and lots of shields. And that's where your First Order TIE Fighter becomes really fantastic against that sort of hero mill matchup, where they're running those, running a Recon deck or something like that. And of course I don't really need to talk much about Sonic Cannon. If you get it out, you focus it to the 6 side and you chuck loads of damage, and it's a bit brilliant. So that's our support suite. Let's just have a little look at what's going on with that with regards to sort of mitigation. Well, let's have a look here. If I put it, let me just drag those across because I'll include those in this little bit of discussion here. So in terms of the removal that we've got, I have chosen these 7 cards. There are other options you could use. For a long time I didn't use Feel Your Anger. I felt like there were better options, and I've sort of gone from having 1 Feel Your Anger and 2 Overconfidence and back and forth on that one. My experience is most of the time this deck people go for Mother Talzin, which makes me a bit more uncomfortable about playing the Overconfidence. We can do quite well with keeping her alive, but of course that Feel Your Anger just doesn't require the spot, and that's really helpful. Flank you might think is a weird one to include when we've only got 2 characters, but remember by rounds 3 and 4 and so on we could have 2 or 3 supports out, and it can be quite good to use those supports, get those into play, and we've still got our characters untapped whilst our opponent, who, unless we're playing against hero vehicles, there's not a lot of deck using a lot of activating supports. It turns flank on. It's really strong, and of course it is basically one of the best removal cards in the game, along with pin down if you're able to play them on a regular basis, which we are with this deck. If there's one area to the deck that I think could use a bit of work or could use a bit more playing around with, as I said, I'm not quite happy with the Overconfidence to Feel Your Anger. This is definitely one area that you could absolutely play with a bit and make your own. Force Illusion is a no-brainer. That's just got to be in at the moment with Sabine being around, with OTK decks using Maul Saber with the big modifier on, like Force Illusion. It's got to be in there. Witch Magic is a fantastic card. It's so good in this deck. The amount of times Witch Magic keeps Talzin alive way longer than it feels it should be. To take Talzin from, say, I don't know, being on like 6 damage, and your opponent can almost sense, oh, I've nearly got her down, and then you heal for 3, because that's, unless you're really unlucky to hit those chance cubes, it's going to be healing for 3, and to take her back down to 3 damage after being on 6, and it suddenly feel like, oh, it's just gone out of reach, is such a good feeling. And of course, late game, it's still really, really good to keep Thrawn alive, because most people go for Talzin first, hoping for that sort of quick, easy kill. This bunch of cards here has kept my characters alive to be able to make the most out of those supports. In the vast majority of games, I have rarely had any super blowouts, and they've only been against Sabine, when she's actually rolled amazingly, because we can deal with the other sort of cards and events that she can play. So this has been really super strong, but I still think it could be better. Now, another card that I've chucked in, and this is John Magnusson, pretty sure that's his name, from Destiny Council. Great guy, loads of cool stuff. He was the one who pointed out Dark Scheme with Thrawn is really great. Listen, with Thrawn, we're looking to get rid of those really annoying pieces of our opponent's strategy. That if we can get rid of, if it's playing against Sabine, Never Tell Me the Odds is a card we've got to get rid of. So Thrawn's ability can help us to get rid of it. The difficulty is that if they're going faster than us, which they probably are if they're playing Hero Yellow like that, we're not going to get to activate Thrawn in time before she's doing all the ambush shenanigans. Dark Scheme will allow us to clear out, hopefully, that card before we see it next turn. And at the very least, even if you don't see a card like that, we can take out their removal, making it really difficult for them to deal with our supports, which are going to deal the damage. And then when we activate, we can just go after their removal again with Thrawn. So it's kind of like, it feels like an extra activation of Thrawn's ability for a cost of 1. That also gives us a really good heads up on what cards they're going to be playing with next turn, and that kind of information is really valuable, because it can even influence how we finish out this particular round, because you tend to play Dark Scheme towards the end of a round, but it can influence how we finish out a particular round, knowing what cards they're about to draw. It's actually a card I absolutely discarded early on, and after watching him play with it, I thought, oh, that's actually a really good shout. So some of the tricks. Here's some little tricksy cards that we've got. These are really good cards, guys, really good cards. Frighten has been outstandingly good. So many people aren't anticipating it at the moment. There's a lot of people who aren't playing around Frighten. And it's phenomenally strong to essentially be able to... It's not only remove 3 shields from, say, one character, you can spread that out. And, against these hero mill decks where they are trying to spread their shields out, it's perfect. But against so many decks that, they feel like they've got a character who, I don't know, maybe they've got 6 health left and they've got, 3 shields on, they're thinking, well, it's going to do 9 damage, that's hard work for them to do. Even if you roll out 2 supports, you've got 6 damage showing, they still feel like they're safe. This Frighten, in that instance, has killed so many of my opponent's characters because they think that damage showing on the table is just a little bit out of reach of my supports, and of course it just simply isn't with Frighten. When you've also factor in that you've got this great card, 3 Steps Ahead, I'm only running 1 of it, and maybe this deck could also do with Tactical Mastery. That's a suggestion I would definitely make. 3 Steps Ahead, we've got the resources often to be able to do this, to be able to say roll in Thrawn, roll in our Sonic Cannon, and then resolve is massive, especially if you're combining that with All In, because Thrawn is likely to roll some resources, or you might do Talzin, you might do Sonic Cannon and Talzin. This is to get off what you want really consistently. Like this is a brilliant card for that. And All In is filthy. All In is just a horrible card when you've got so much focus available to you in a deck like this. I mean, once you get to mid-game and you've got 2 or even 3, if you've got 3 vehicles out and you're able to get your dice out without getting them sort of removed, I mean, people are getting wiser and wiser to decks that try and pull their dice out, but All In, I mean, even just as a finisher, you know, just to be able to, you know, you roll out you roll out your Thrawn and you roll out your support, you know, it almost has another, it's almost like another 3 steps ahead a little bit, because you can just get that damage happening without them being able to respond to it. So All In is so good. So that's the deck. I haven't mentioned the battlefield. The battlefield I've run with mostly actually has been the straightforward Mos Eisley Spaceport, but largely because of the hero mill matchup. I don't really want them to be able to get vehicles out for 1. It just becomes really stupid when they can be playing speeders for 1 and they can be playing those HWKs for 1. Ugh. So I'm a bit uncomfortable, but this is a bit of a meta call. I think if you're seeing a lot of hero vehicles and don't run Factory Alpha, however, if you're not, then it could be a really good shout with this. Every resource saved, even with a deck like this, which can make so many, makes a big difference. And I think Mos Eisley Spaceport, it's still that good go-to one. I don't like the one that's draw 1 card and get a resource if you aren't regularly able to claim it. That feels like that's too much to give my opponent, unless I'm playing a mill deck. I'm quite happy then if they're drawing extra cards. So anyway, this is, I've called this Dragula. I don't know why, but I'm sure you can come up with a much better name for it. But here we've got a deck that I really feel like has the tools to be able to deal with what's going on in the meta at the moment. Now, of course, lots of that I've just talked about as I've gone through the individual cards. But just as a sort of brief précis, I think, you know, when you're going up against OTK, you're going to see a lot of OTK, 1-turn kill stuff with 7th Sister, firing off the Price of Failures and the leaderships. With this deck, it's not a bad matchup. It's actually quite a good matchup for us. The variant that's really nasty is Night Sister. If they've got Night Sister, that's really awkward because, of course, we're using lots of focus, and so Night Sister just causes us all sorts of problems. But it's fine because Night Sister just only has so much life longevity. She's going to run out of life pretty quickly if they're having to use that quite a lot. And we have got ways of kind of bursting that damage, you know, cheating the things out. They often like to put shields onto Night Sister, frighten, and then we put the damage through. Is really nasty against that. So I would say in that matchup, get rid of the Night Sister first. Actually, before going for because the only way you're going to get rid of 7th Sister is by being able to play out these supports and get that damage through. And Night Sister just wreaks havoc with that. And of course, you only need 2 rounds really before they're going to get that 1-turn kill going off most regularly. So you need to get rid of Night Sister as fast as you can to give yourself a chance in that one, I think. I would also suggest with Thrawn, it's really tough. Because you could say, Maul Saber is a nightmare. If they get a Maul Saber down on the table, you're in real difficulties because we don't really run shields in this deck. It's easy for them to keep shields off and they're going to get to keep reusing it. So I would be tempted to say 3 from the off. However, you also kind of want to say 1 for leadership because they can leadership with Sienna. And then there's also Price of Failure. So this is where playing Dark Scheme, you might just have to suck it up for that first round. But if you can get that Dark Scheme off, if you can, you'll get to have a look at their hand when you use Thrawn in that first round. It'll give you the heads up for what to say at the start of the second round, and to try and what to clear out of their hand that's upcoming. If you do get to play a Dark Scheme, I'd consider mulliganing for Dark Scheme against OTK, and that's a bit crazy, but it really could be worth it. So if you're playing against Sabine, which is obviously another real pain, Sabine will do Sabine things, as they say, and she will sometimes just roll out the damage. I think what you can do though is, I'd be saying 3 with Thrawn. Crikey, say 3 with Thrawn, because that's going to take out Never Tell Me the Odds, which is a real pain, and of course going to take out Hyperspace Jump, which is awful against us. I have been hit with a Hyperspace Jump playing against Sabine, and it's just terrible, because of course we're all supports, we're going to be much slower than they are, and hitting you with a Hyperspace Jump when you haven't even activated either of your characters, it's just terrible. So say 3 against that deck to get rid of that Hyperspace, and again use your Dark Scheme to get rid of it. And remember 80 DP to get rid of that running interference, because running interference is really awkward, especially as what we want to do is, you know, if we're going to be playing things like our 3 steps ahead, well, that's going to nail us, because it's on our turn, so that's however many actions we put together, we're not going to be able to activate a character, say. So yeah, I think what you call out against the hero mill, you could say 3 against that. Try and hit something like Entrenched. You could hit some of those, you know, those bigger events. Getting rid of vehicles. Or one thing with Sabine, don't try and hit her weapons. Don't think, right, well I'll say 2 and get rid of Holdout Blaster, because her ability is she can play it from the discard pile. Don't fall into that trap. You need to hit the events against Sabine. Don't hit her equipment, because she'll play those out of the discard pile. I think maybe as well with the hero mill, you need to make sure you're getting your damage through every round, because they'll mill us so fast. And so saying 1, taking all their removal away is really good. We can deal with their shields, we can kind of deal with their annoying supports, so I would be saying it might be an idea to go for, just go after their removal. Stop them being able to play, you know, if you say 1, you know, and you get rid of things like easy pickings, or if they're playing Electroshock or whatever, especially those spot yellows, that's really nice. And of course you go after the yellow character, so you switch all of those spot yellow removal, which is so good against them off. And that's also the same for hero mill. You know, I'd be going after Ezra, as they're probably playing, to make that happen. Anyway, lots of information in the deck tech, as there always is, and there's loads of other cards that you could be running in this deck as well. One I will just quickly mention, obviously these, you know, you could use the best defense in terms of adjusting that removal suite. I have been toying with the idea of playing Commanding Presence. It's another 3 cost, so it fits in with the whole of the rest of the theme of the deck, but largely because they just seem to go for Talzin all the time, and Commanding Presence, adding 2 with those specials, that just makes our support go completely bonkers when they're you know, when TIE Fighter actually reads 3, 4, 5 damage, ATDP reads 4, 4, 5 damage. I mean, it just starts getting a bit ridiculous. So yeah, if you've got some Commanding Presences, have a play with that, because I think that could also be a cheeky little include, maybe a one-of in there as well. Anyway, so that is Thrawn, Talzin, but the support style one rather than using an upgrade style one, and I've been having a lot of success with it. So have a play with it, see what you think. If you enjoyed the video, please give us a like, and just to mention, if you have never checked out swdestiny.com, get over there. They've got loads of great stuff on there, loads of great articles and videos and so on from other really great content makers like Tiny Grimes doing Smuggler's Den and so on. And also, if you're looking for a good podcast to listen to, especially for competitive Destiny, there are so many out there. I'll mention the guys at Knights of Ren who do a really great competitive podcast over there as well. So anyway, until next time guys, have fun playing this and keep enjoying your Destiny.